I'm going to show you how to flip man disadvantages and stop throwing man advantages on defense. It's not necessarily a discipline thing. A lot of people tend to throw that word around. Coaches, players. A player might be taught to be disciplined, and in a man advantage, go play the most passive angle possible to preserve their life, which in a lot of cases is not the best thing to do, and I'll show you why. The key word for this video is variance. In Valorant terms, variance refers to the degree of inconsistency or randomness that's allotted to a specific play. There's one general win condition for both number advantage and disadvantage, increasing variance for enemies when you're up numbers and decreasing variance for yourself when you're down numbers. But it's not some black and white answer that solves never losing advantages. It happens every single game, even at VZT level. Since we're talking purely about defense today, just off the bat, the passive angle you're holding most of the time actually increases variance. Why? If it doesn't contest their win condition, it opens opportunities for attackers to flip variance back in their favor. This has a negative correlation with win rate. When you enable attackers to act more freely, you lower their exposure to potential variance in key parts of the map, which in turn increases their success rate. The prime example is completely giving up a site to play retake when it's not needed. This is map dependent, but what was originally a 70% win rate 5v4 can easily drop to a 50% win rate once bomb is down and defenders are forced into a post-plant puzzle. If you choose this super disciplined option without compensating elsewhere on the map, most of the time it actually makes it harder for your team to win overall. When you're up numbers, you want to lower variance based on the map. The most important thing is limiting multi-variable fights and having one clear goal to counter what the attackers are most likely to do. This is super undermentioned, but it's heavily dependent on the map and the agents alive. On maps like Pearl, there are clear distinctions between the first and second areas of contention. Nearly every time attackers are down numbers, their instinct is to contact the first area of contention. They're looking for opportunities and timings, and they also expect you to play slightly safer. If they decide to use utility here, it gives away positioning and intention, and removes any remaining surprise factor. These areas are also easier to dry clear, fewer angles, less complexity, which makes them more likely to be contacted. Because of this, playing disciplined and passive here is not always the best option. A lot of the time, this is where you can get a freer kill compared to the second area of contention, as attackers are more likely to walk directly into your crosshair. This is a very stable, low variance position to hold. The likelihood of utility is much lower, and the number of angles you're exposed to is reduced. The second area of contention, the site, has more angles and more variables. If attackers pass through the first area uncontested, by process of elimination, they know defenders are on site. Once they reach this area, they will usually begin utiling, depending on the agents alive. This is how they lower variance back in their favor by clearing lines and removing uncertainty. If their heavy utility agents, most notably smokes, are dead, they may continue to contact even here. This is a strong case to quickly decide to play crossfire on site because attackers have extremely high variance and very little ability to reduce it. Going back to the example of giving up site and playing retake, the clearest example is Haven A. There are rounds where you have a server A long, just prodding for info. Any utility on the cross immediately forces pressure, pushing server back or demanding a rotate. But sometimes you can't rotate A because of pressure elsewhere on the map. B, garage, or even you having a potential setup that you can't break. So server is forced to play retake or hold extremely high variance solo angles. In this situation, you're forced to retake, whether that's from Heaven or CT. What was originally a high percentage 5v4 becomes significantly lower if attackers choose to recommit to A. So how do we play the 5v4 when they force your hand? You have to compensate. You can't play the round the same way as before server was pushed off. If your trap is at C or garage, you need to get information there on your own timing or make a play. If they're still there, that smoke A was likely a bluff, but if mid is clear, they can only go A or C long now, with odds favoring A. So you compensate by flanking. Creating a multi-angled retake is far lower variance and higher win rate than retaking only from CT and Heaven. This is because by reducing variables, there's fewer sightlines, clearer post-plant information, so you create a more controlled environment with a clearer plan and tempo. Another common tendency when up numbers is if you get first blood and it's not on the traditional lurker, attackers often will go quiet and shift into contacting as per usual. So it's a good idea here to assume that the traditional lurker will activate to try and swing equilibrium back. For example, if Cypher utility is spotted A at the start and you get a kill mid and the map goes quiet, there's a strong assumption that they'll end towards A. They'll look for opportunities where they haven't faced resistance and Sentinel players will instinctively feel responsible to equalize the numbers. Being on the same page with this read gives your team confidence in rotations, calling fakes, or punishing the lurk. Now let's talk about man disadvantages and how to flip them. When people are up numbers, they gain a sense of security and naturally loosen discipline. This is what you exploit. In most man down rounds, the objective is to play for kills, don't rush. Play slow and into areas where enemies are likely to take try fights rather than utility backed fights. Where your teammate died, when, and how that impacts map control. Look at taking timings for information advantage. Be unpredictable. Even when enemies are doing the correct thing, you can still catch them off guard. For example, if your duelist dies early going for an aggro peek, that's one less set of eyes on a lane. If enemies are grouped there, they'll instinctively speed up, and if they don't, they're likely spread thin. Based on this information, take fights in the thinnest area of the map, where there's only sentinel utility or a single player holding. You compensate the man down by gaining map control and taking educated risks. Take the 1v1. If there's only a cypher trip, you know the rest of the team is skewed on the other side. Call for your team to gamble the opposite side, turning it back into a high probability round. On Pearl especially, certain lines are almost always dry peaked. You kill one, and this is where mechanics separate good players from great ones. Getting multiple kills on predictable dry peaks and flipping the man advantage back. So you must take calculated risks. Be wary if they're just holding for anti-aggression. If the whole map is quiet, it can be extremely obvious. Take caution when that's the case.